The time has come, unfortunately. It's June the 30th here in Japan. We've just passed midnight, which means officially BiSH is over. So we're going to be doing a bit of a special episode today. We're going to be looking a bit at the history of BiSH, you know, why they're such a special group. We're going to be talking about the long process of the whole BiSH is over thing, how they managed to wrap up this unique group in such a unique way, the highs and the lows of that. And also we're going to be talking most importantly about some of the announcements we've seen online that I'll be sharing with you and what this means for the future of the members of BiSH, what we got to look forward to going forwards, because actually I think there's a lot of positives that we have to look at in the future. But hey, we got to start somewhere. So let's start now. BiSH is over. Let's unpack that. Hi everyone, welcome back to Japan, where we might as well start with really the core thing that comes before all of this, which is, why is BiSH so special? Why are we talking about BiSH? Why do we care so much? Well, I'm guessing if you're watching this video, you're likely probably a fan, so you don't need me to tell you this. But hey, sometimes it's important to recap the basics, right? Well, BiSH, from the outside to an uninitiated person, could just look like another girl band. You know, just another very cool looking group of women singing pop songs in Japan. And, you know, ever since we've had all this genre blurring as well, you know, in a sort of post-baby metal era, we've got everything from baby metal to Wagamama Rakia and Passcode. It's not unusual as well for us to see groups who go against the grain or a little bit edgy. But I must say that BiSH really caught a lot of people's imaginations for a lot of very good reasons. Now, when I think about BiSH, I think about a group who they were very much built on this idea that, you know, the whole whack concept of being anti-idol, being something which was kind of going against the grain. Now, for anyone who's maybe not so familiar, of course, when you look back in the history of J-pop, you've got the groups from the 90s, you know, J-pop was very cute, and then even going into the 2000s, we had things like the AKB48s, which were a massive cultural phenomenon, and probably in a lot of the minds of overseas people who don't know much about Japanese music, that's probably what comes into their head, you know, it's sort of cutesy J-pop, AKB48, you know, the sort of schoolgirl look kind of thing. Well, you know, it was something which was a rather pervasive stereotype, and therefore things like BiSH, the idea of being anti-idol, was something that was always going to be very much you know, a niche that could be really exploited to make something interesting. And of course, before BiSH, we had BiS, also from Whack, and BiS were very much trying to go against the grain. But I think BiS probably typified one of the problems that Whack as a general, in my opinion, has always had, which is something of a propensity towards being a little bit too shock, a little bit too about the spectacle. And yes, they had some great songs, but for me, it was when BiSH arrived. And BiSH, as far as I'm aware from everything I know about the history, were there really to take over from BiS after the initial version of BiS, the initial lineup of BiS. I'm trying to differentiate them properly. The initial lineup of BiS stopped. BiSH kind of was created to take over from them before then BiS came back. We following? Truth is, though, is that I think that BiSH took it to a whole nother level. BiSH were, and still always have been, and I want to say are, but BiSH is over. BiSH are very much a group who just know how to balance the being edgy, being weird, alongside also delivering really, really good, solid songs. This is the thing, is that when you think about BiSH, you think about a group where just normal people can go into a karaoke room, pick up a microphone and sing a really good BiSH song. You can have your orchestras, you can have all of these big songs that make people want to sing along, and then alongside it you can have crazy, incredibly mad stuff that makes you just think, wow, this rocks, wow, they're screaming on this song, wow, this is just not like something I'd ever expect from a girl band. And that's really part of what makes BiSH so special, is that they managed to capture the idea of being anti-idol, but at the same time they went against all the things that were not so great about Idol. You know, the sort of manufactured feeling, you know, that feeling that everything was, you know, just a group of girls who all had to be the same, coming off a production line, all had to have zero personality, don't date anyone, because if you do that, then as AKB showed, you're going to be so regretful for having a boyfriend, you might have to shave your head, you know. I mean, it was this whole feeling that the whole Idol thing was so manufactured, so clinical, that it kind of was a little bit unpleasant, really. And groups like BiSH made it more personal. They gave you members who you could look at them and go, they each have their own individual personalities. You might not like them all, but you can look at them and you can see who they are. You can see them as being people. Yes, slightly dramatic, over the top personalities, but these are people who are stars. You can actually feel when they sing what makes each one of them individual. They have voices that one person might like. You might be a big fan of Ayuni's voice, but you might not be as much of a fan of, say, Momoko's voice. I'm a big Momoko fan. Hashtag no bias. We'll get onto that later. You've got people like Chicchi, who when Chicchi sings, they keep in the breathing sounds very strongly in her recordings. You know, each person has that thing that makes them unique. And you know, each person might be to your taste and might be against your taste, but you can't take away from the fact there's genuine personality. Like I say though, they didn't just throw the entire rule book out the window. They kept the idea that ultimately a pop group is supposed to be something that people can enjoy. Yes, they have the edgy stuff for people who want to get really into it, but they also have those karaoke songs, those songs that can chart, those songs that make you feel like, yes, this is also a catchy group as well. And so that for me is why the BiSH formula worked so well. It was a mixture of personality, a mixture of accessible songs, but at the same time something deeper for people who wanted to feel it was a little bit of heart beneath it, a little bit of uniqueness beneath it, a little bit of something that wasn't just mass produced, despite the fact that WAC have something of a habit of coming across as, well, we'll get into that later, shall we? Now, this channel has a rather interesting history of BiSH that I'm going to quickly cover before we go on. Because we started back in 2019, I think it was January the 2nd, 2019, the original iteration of this channel started before we had to restart it. Copyright. But the thing is that I remember we were a few days into the channel and I was staying in a little bedsit room. Well, it was even smaller than the bedsit. It was one of those things you hear about in Japan that you almost can't believe it exists. I was paying for a tiny little room that was literally the size of the futon. You open up the door and the futon was there. There was no space around the futon. You just walked straight onto the futon, fell asleep. That was it. It was just that and a little window that looked like I was in a prison cell. I remember I was staying there and I was sitting hunched in the corner and we only had a few subscribers and a suggestion came in, hey Howard, why don't you check out this song? And it was a live version of Monsters by BiSH. And I remember it was really bad audio as well. It was not the best introduction to the band, if I'm honest with you. However, it just really took me that this was a song that had kind of it was mixing sort of dance and EDM, but it had pop qualities as well. It was a little bit edgy, but it wasn't edgelord trying so hard to be, oh my God, that's so controversial. It just kind of had a little bit of rawness, a bit of intensity, but also a great deal of quality choreography. And I just thought, yeah, I like this, but I need to check out more to see if it's really up to snuff, if it's really, you know, if it's really just sort of a good image, but can they pull it off? Can this actually be a full product? And I hadn't really heard anything of BiSH up at this point. Even though it's 2019, yeah, sort of a good 4 years ago. I hadn't, 5 years ago now. No, 4. 4.5. I hadn't really heard anything of BiSH before, which is quite surprising now I come back to look back at it. But I got into it more and then I just started hearing songs, and the one thing that really blew me away, and this was a line that I used so many times when listening to new BiSH songs, was this thing, and I'm going to keep on coming back to this, that every time you pressed play on a BiSH song, you did not know what you were going to get. And that was one of the things that I loved. Now, yes, there are groups who try many different things. I've often said that, you know, you can have groups who do the same thing every single time and it's really good. You know, your favorite punk band, it'll always be punk, it'll always be roughly the same, but you know you're in safe hands. The greatest bands, the greatest groups, the ones who I really love, yeah, I'm going to get some controversial comments here, but I would say, you know, things like the Beatles, but also things like Queen. I'm a big fan of Blur, and you'll probably know why when I say this statement, is because to me the best bands are the ones where they do so many things that are so wildly different. And yes, there will be bad songs in there. There'll be mistakes along the way when you're trying to be experimental. But it's the fact that you get so many different things from one artist. Now, BiSH took that ability to do something so different, so vibrant, so, yeah, so just basically varied. But they also had the quality of having a good team of writers in here. This is where I must give Kenta a little bit of credit as well, because there are some things I'm going to say against Kenta. Kenta Core, whack, you know, not always a big fan of everything that's been going on here, but there are some fantastic songs in there, and so you have to give credit to their core staff for that, in that they managed to go through so many different styles, but by using that staff written formula, managed to keep the quality so high. There are very few bad BiSH songs. We did a thing on this channel as well where, because I'm going to be working, now that BiSH is finally over, I'm going to be working towards doing a top 25, probably top 20 list of BiSH songs, just from my own personal opinion. And as a result, to lead up to that, a couple of months ago, we did a overnight live stream where we just listened to every single BiSH song in a row, just as a refresher, and I was taking notes as we went. And the truth is, there's just not any bad BiSH songs. And I even heard a couple of songs I'd never heard before that were rarities that people got to me on during the night while we were doing that stream. And I just remember thinking, yeah, there isn't any bad songs. Okay, there's maybe a couple where I'm like, okay, I don't need to hear that. Repeat. But then you mix that with the fact there's some really brilliant songs. This is just a group who it's very hard to pick holes in. So yeah, it's variation mixed with a general high level of quality. That was brilliant for me. And that moved us on to the fact that I was so enamored by just how great this experience was, hearing so many new songs, hearing it always being surprising. You know, when there were so many groups who people would say, oh, how I'd check out this new song, and I kind of knew what I was going to get. And I was thinking, oh, I don't know what to say. You know, someone would say, oh, check out this latest song by X band, and I'll be like, oh, I kind of know what it's going to be. I've got to think of something fresh to say about this. But then it would be someone say, oh, there's a new BiSH song out. I'd check it out and I'd be like, I have no idea. I'm just going to be excited to talk about it. So this was what made BiSH so much fun. And then this led to me getting the opportunity to be on NHK for 15 seconds talking about BiSH, who had a really great conversation with the producer, and unfortunately they used probably the most boring part of the whole conversation. Still, I was on NHK talking about BiSH, and just following this all through, it's been a constant joy every step of the way. Now, it must be said, there are a couple of things that I would say are maybe the negatives, and these are probably worth pointing out because in a minute we're going to talk about how the end of this group has been handled. See, I've always said that if you're a really true fan of something, then you have to be able to say what you like and the things that you think, oh, maybe that could be a bit better. I always think if anyone says this thing is totally perfect, they're not really a real fan. I think they're just kind of obsessed with that thing. Anything that you love, you've got to be able to say, I love it because I'm realistic about it. The biggest fans of groups we've got in our Back of Broadcast Discord community, people who are fans of groups like Bandmade, Scandal. We've got some massive fans there who run whole communities separately for those bands. And they all are able to point out the things that they, would want to see improved with the groups that they love. So don't take this as an insult, but I'm just going to quickly point out, because this is something that is going to be relevant when we talk more later about how BiSH is concluded. There are a couple of things that maybe to me I maybe wanted to see differently, or maybe kind of felt like they were thorns in the side of BiSH. And the first one is the fact that I had initially always felt that with WAC being this anti-idol record company or management agency, or both, that in a way that BiSH were great as a result of WAC. And over time I started to feel that in actuality BiSH were great in spite of WAC. Because I mentioned earlier about how what made BiSH so great for me was the fact that they were a balance of both being this incredibly interesting, different, filled with personality kind of group, and yet at the same time they also managed to be accessible. They managed to be, sort of someone who you could really, a group who you could really enjoy in a pop way as well. But as time went on, it seemed that WAC are only really interested in doing stuff that's shock value, doing reality TV shows and documentaries. And it seems like they, if anything, trying to be anti-idol, it seems that they're into all the things that make the idol groups that they're supposed to be anti. They're basically the same. What was the whole idol thing that they were against? These sort of manufactured groups who it was all about sort of graduations and stuff. And yet that's pretty much exactly what they've done. You look at the next BiSH thing. It's basically just exactly the same as what all the other idol groups do. So for me, their WAC, I've never really been a fan of their whole way of doing things, and I think that they're just they're the reality TV show. They're the Simon Cowell aspect, which I don't like. I think that BiSH is mostly great because the members are really great, in spite of the they've got a genuineness which is fantastic in spite of the very fake way that I think Whack tries to ham things up and make things seem more than they actually are. You hear Ayuni D and singing with like passion. You hear Aina The End sort of screeching her voice with passion. You hear the group, you see them performing and the looks that they actually feel like they're into the music. That feels real. You see the drama that Whack puts together. That feels fake. So for me, Whack were I went from thinking, oh, this is really interesting, to kind of them being something that I wasn't such a fan of. And then that kind of led to the other thing, which is that as much as I said the music that they do is so varied and so interesting, it must be pointed out there were some songs at the center of their sound, like the ones that I think were later described, and this is a slightly contentious term, but they were described as kentacore. There were some songs that got a bit samey. I think for me, the problem was songs like Final Shits, where it was like when Final Shits came out, I remember I kind of gave that a slightly damning review because I was like, okay, this sounds exactly the same as like a slew of singles they'd had directly before, which was interesting because you looked at some of the other songs that were not being released as singles, and again, they still had the variation in their sound, but it seemed like there became this love for pushing songs that were very similar. That, however, is not such a problem. In retrospect, when I listen to songs like Final Shits now, and I listen to it back in a playlist of BiSH songs, it's much better, but there was a period for a time where I just felt like the songs they were pushing as singles were not the most interesting ones, and for a group that had built their sound off of doing interesting songs where you never knew what to expect next, again, I think this is a Whack thing. So I guess I could probably condense this all down to one point, which is that my problems often were more that Whack, I think, I just didn't like the whole way they operated. BiSH, I felt were like a group who was so good, so interesting, that I just wanted Whack to just keep their dirty paws off and just let BiSH be interesting. But there you go. There's a little point that I should quickly point out, because now what I want to really move on to is where we are now and where we're going to go into the future. Because we all love this group. They're a fantastic group. Where do we stand now? Where are we going to be in the future? And for that, we're going to be having a little look at some of the posts that Whack have put out. So to really appreciate how this whole BiSH is over process is working, let's start by looking on their own page at their announcement, and this is the BiSH is over announcement. Now, for the sake of the fact that most of us don't read Japanese fluently, my Japanese is very slow, I just put it straight through DeepL. So let's have a look and see what it says here. So yeah. Regarding the future activities of the members, thank you very much for supporting BiSH until now. After today's bye-bye show for Never performance, BiSH will be disbanded. I did see a lot of people on the train today wearing their BiSH shirts with all their BiSH merch. There was a huge number of BiSH fans out and about. I was really sad I wasn't able to go to the concert. Still, it was great to see so many people out there, so many fans. I remember when I went to see a concert at the Eggman in Shibuya, and I was going to see Trident and Fleur Fleur, and at the same time BiSH were playing across the street in a huge stadium venue. It's really great. The BiSH fans are always out there with loads of merch, so it was just, and they just look, they're so identifiable, so it was really great to see that today. So I think they must have had a fantastic show. We're not talking about that now because I haven't seen the footage from it, but that's something we might come back to later. But yeah, there you go. So that was the final show today. So anyway, this is the thing that I'm really interested in. The future activities of the members will be as follow. So with Chicchi, album release will be announced at a later date. Now, I think we've spoken a lot about the fact that with Chicchi, I really hope that she has a good solo career. Obviously, she's released solo songs before. I think that she has a very interesting voice. I think very often we kind of see her compared to people like Ayuni D, who's obviously got Pedro, Aina, who's got a very strong, unique voice, and she's got this whole image and everything, and really her solo career's pushed ahead further. I think that Chicchi's kind of got the disadvantage of the fact that she's just a good singer. She doesn't have as much of a celebrity built around her, and yet I think she's such an engaging person. She's got such a wonderful voice. I really hope that she teams up with good writers, really good writers who can get the most out of her talent, because, yeah, I mean, Chicchi's just, she's someone who, she's got such a wonderful smile. She's such a, she's sort of person who every time you see her, she just makes you happy. She's got a wonderful personality, and I want to see more brought out of that. I feel like she's such an undeveloped character. She's someone who feels like there's so much potential left on the table that I'm glad that her career isn't ending here. I'm glad that we're going to be seeing more of Chicchi in the future. She's someone who I'm excited. I'm definitely going to be covering her solo career, but I hope the most is brought out of that and she's working with the right people. Now, it seems that she's still going to be working with Whack. So let's hope the WAC do a good job. We'll be watching you, WAC. Let's move on to, obviously, Aina. Now, Aina, I think Aina would probably be described as the big celebrity. She is a massive name, rather interesting considering obviously when she joined BiSH, but she is definitely like a very, very big name. Now it says here that Aina will be playing the lead role in the music film Kyrie no Uta. I'm not actually sure what Kyrie means, but something song. Directed by Shinji Iwai, I don't know the director, sorry, which will be released nationwide on 13th of October. Now that's one thing, I think we've all seen that she's been talking about this acting career. Obviously the other news was the fact that she bumped her head, but luckily she's better. But she's been looking at an acting career, which is going to further her celebrity. But obviously she's also already got a fairly prolific solo career as well, which has sort of gone from strength to strength. She had this song which I really loved, it was great, with Zocking Dog with Tokyo Ska Paradise Orchestra, but she's had such a range of really interesting songs. I like the fact that, like with her voice, and kind of like with the whole BiSH thing before it, she's managed to break into a popular sphere, but at the same time keep something very unique. You know, she doesn't just sound like another pop song singer, you know, just not another generic singer. She's got that sort of slightly smoky, jazzy voice. She's got that personality. She's got that look where she could be, you know, kind of like your celebrity singer who sort of looks is on the front of magazines, but at the same time she just looks that little bit more unique, that, you know, she's not just a copy-paste clone. I think that Aina is kind of like a natural born celebrity. And so I really hope that, again, there's a lot of potential in the future, but I think Shaw is going an interesting route. If anything, the biggest thing for me with Aina is I don't want the fact that she is going in such a good trajectory, and the fact that now with the BiSH closing, she's probably going to have a lot more opportunities to look at. I hope that she doesn't water it down. The most recent single that she brought out, I remember being a little bit concerned that there were some elements where it just felt like it was ticking a few too many let's be pop kind of boxes, but her solo career thus far has been coloured with a lot of really interesting choices, and personality has always been there. So I'm very hopeful for a really interesting future for Aina. Now, let's move on to #NoBias Momoko. Now, I had kind of said, I made predictions for a lot of the members prior to all this coming up, because this obviously had so long to think about this. I kind of said that I thought that Momoko, she's an interesting one, because as much as I like her voice, I always feel like when she's singing in a way that almost feels like she's talking to you as well. There's kind of a real honesty in her voice. It's not the big, loud performer voice, but it's this voice of someone who just sounds like, there's an honesty to all the emotion that she conveys. And I just like her personality. It's that kind of, there's something very real about her. So with Momoko, I know that she wasn't really looking so much, from everything we saw, to go on to a big solo career. And you look at her own webpage, she has got a webpage online that I would recommend you check out. Obviously, her love for writing has been a big thing. And she's shown interest. She talks about her favourite authors a lot. She's written as well. I would just recommend, if you want something different from any of these people, Momoko's going to be a really interesting one to follow. But I wasn't thinking she's going to go on to be a solo singer. I was more thinking she would enter that sort of celebrity space, be the sort of person who'd be on TV shows. And most of what I wanted her to keep on doing writing. Now, it says here she's going to be, she's moved to Watanabe Entertainment. She's active as a cultural figure, mainly in writing and media appearances, details to be announced. Now, I went on to Watanabe's website. And Watanabe, quite interesting. If you don't know this lady with the thick eyebrows, she's a famous comedian. She's done a lot of interesting. She's like, I think she climbed Mount Kilimanjaro for like a documentary. They got her. They got people like Shoko Nakagawa, who, if you don't know Shoko Nakagawa, she's a really big celebrity name in Japan. Even though like she's done voice acting, but her career was very much, there was a lot of music at the beginning of that as well. However, she's just been in so many places. It's just an interesting, kind of weird, half otaku, half cute pop singer type person. This company just seems to have a lot of female artists who have abilities, in music and various things, but have just kind of made a lot of interesting presences whose personalities have been allowed to be shown. And this is where I think that this could be a really good place for Momoko. Must admit, anyone who's getting away from whack, I'm happy for them. But seeing her there at Watanabe Entertainment, I don't know what they're going to do with her. I know the best things that Watanabe Entertainment have done. I don't know so much about anything that they've had that's been a failure. However, it just seems like a good home for us, somewhere where someone who's got a personality, someone who is probably interesting. I mean, she writes, she's clearly got an interesting view on the world. She's that kind of person. I get the feeling that Momoko's a bit of a thinker, and therefore it would be interesting if they managed to get her on TV documentaries where she gets to go and talk about things and, show a perspective. Maybe that'll help her, encourage her to write books. I don't know. I just get the feeling this could be a place where, if all goes well, we could see Momoko really just in her element. So I'm really happy about that. Having looked at the company's website, I'm happy to see where she's going. Yeah, I feel good, and I'm really looking forward to hearing more about Momoko in the future. Now, on to Atsuko. Now, Atsuko has moved to a company called Hiropro. I'd never heard of this company before. Activities centered on variety shows, details to be announced by the new agency tomorrow. So if I haven't seen it, apparently these announcements are going to come up tomorrow. Now, it says variety shows. This could be many things. Obviously, in Japan, the variety shows are a big thing on TV as well. So I'm assuming it's going to be on TV. I kind of felt that Atsuko and Rin Rin, I really imagined them. So I said Rin Rin is Lin Lin, but Rin Rin. Anyway, I imagine them having a very active career on TV. Just something, again, big personalities. Big personalities, but maybe haven't forged so much into doing solo careers. I know Atsuko has played around with it a little bit, but I imagine them being the sort of ones who do the TV rounds. This is a big thing in Japan. People who used to be singers or maybe are less active singers, they tend to turn up a lot on. You get these big panel shows as well, where lots of celebrities, you've probably seen them, they sit in a long line and they talk about various things. They have guests, and then they'll show them video clips, and there'll be some activity, and then you'll see their face in a circle in the corner as they go, that's interesting, and then they talk about it later. If you've seen anything of Japanese TV, you know what I'm talking about. Big subtitles at the bottom. This is kind of the sort of thing where it's a good place for you to continue career, continue your exposure, so the audience can see you, and then maybe pick up more work. And this is the sort of thing that I was hoping that Atsuko and Lin Lin would take advantage of. It seems that Atsuko's doing that. So Hiropro Entertainment, first thing that comes up, that actually says Harry Potter, just so you know. Well, you probably guessed from what it sees there. So this is, so I don't really know what this company is, but I had a quick look through their site earlier, and I must admit I was a little bit baffled by what I was seeing until I scrolled down and I saw what I believe to be the face of a certain extremely famous Kyoko Fukada. Yeah, Kyoko Fukada. She is, by the way, if you know, there was from about like 2004, there was a very, very famous film. It was actually a fantastic film, but it became very famous a lot with sort of the weeb community, which is a film called Kamikaze Girls. She played the young girl who was obsessed with dresses in that. But she's grown up. She's about 40 now. Very good looking 40-year-old, but she's I'd say probably of the three women who are in most of the commercials you see on television in Japan, she's one of them. She's everywhere, very, very popular. So this company seems to have good connections, again, looking maybe at the best things that these companies have done, the most successful things. But if they're working with Kyoko Fukada and she's in a lot of dramas, then this is a good connected company. So I'm all about that. Now, so yeah, I don't know, but I think that Atsuko's definitely pointing in the correct direction. Now, Lin Lin's a really interesting one. Became independent and is active mainly in the field of art. Contact details to be released tomorrow at 8 p.m. That I did not expect. I must admit, my knowledge of Lin Lin was not as huge as it maybe should have been, but Lin Lin is definitely one of those people who, her personality, just wow. She's got a personality. You see it, especially in those last few songs. Like, her personality was blasting out in that last range of 12 songs that they released over 2022. So Lin Lin doing art, I honestly don't know what to expect. I really don't. This is kind of like, she's probably the most unknown quantity of all of them. And I am just so excited to see what Lin Lin releases, because I have no idea. I have no idea. Lin Lin fans, get in the comments, kicking my ass for not knowing more. But all I know is that her personality, when it comes across, she's just one of those ones where you wouldn't mess with Lin Lin. So I want to see what art Lin Lin's producing. I don't know, but I am really excited to see what that is. I get the feeling that Lin Lin is probably the one who holds the most surprises, so I'm really hoping for a pleasant surprise. I'll be trying to follow up on that tomorrow at 8 o'clock. I don't know if I'll put it in the video, but definitely follow up on that as well. If you're in our community, we'll hopefully talk about that a little bit as well. Maybe you're watching this video days from now and this is all past, but hey. Next, of course, is Ayuni D. Now, Ayuni D, we already know, very independent. Things like Pedro, she has been forging her own next step for a while, a lot like Aina. Now it says establishing a private office and working on her own. This sounds to me like this could be her starting up her own company, and if so, then really good news. I mean, she's got fantastic connections. We already know that. As I say, Pedro is a good example of that, but we've seen her so many times. If you look on social media, you see her in photographs with other celebrities, other musicians. She's definitely someone who's made a good sort of networking step out into the world. So Ayuni D, I'm really interested to see what happens with her. This, again, Ayuni D, I think that it's not so much that she's kind of like the opposite of Lin Lin. It's not that we're expecting anything unpredictable. I mean, she could start an office, and I would not be surprised if she starts an agency where she starts bringing in her own artists, you know, sort of rearing artists into the world. It could be that, and I'd be very excited to see what she does next. And, you know, obviously I want to see the continuation of Pedro, maybe some solo stuff, but to be honest, Pedro would be enough for me, because I think Pedro's her and her element anyway. But this is going to be more of a slow burn. It's a case of seeing what comes from it. I get the feeling like she's got a plan, she's making her own business. This is going to take a while to come to fruition. So I think whereas with a lot of them we might see things very quickly, I think with Ayuni D it's going to be hard to know for a while. However, I would say that she's a reliable pair of hands. So she's got good connections. She's got a solo career, well, a career with Pedro. She's just kind of, you know, I think there's no need for any big drama here. She's just basically continuing what she's already done, but taking the things she's learned, taking the connections she's made, and taking the extra time she'll now have available to her to build upon it, maybe accelerate it, maybe make the whole operation bigger. So with Ayuni D, I think it's going to be a long-term thing. Who knows? She might end up even employing some of the other former members of BiSH. We don't know. I am really excited to see that one, but I think there's not a huge point in speculating about that now. I think that's going to be one that we'll see as it goes. Anyway, there you go. They say it that. That's all. Please support for activities of each member, etc., etc. So what we're going to move on to now is we're going to move on to a little bit about how the whole BiSH conclusion has happened outside of the members, more just really what's happened with the group, because this is where it gets a bit curious. See, when we look at the disbandment of BiSH, for me, this has been something which has both been handled really, really well and in some ways really, really badly. Overall, though, I think we got a lot of the things that we could have, well, a lot of the best things we could have ever dreamed from the whole BiSH is over thing. The first thing that I really loved was that whole process, that final process in 2022 of just releasing one song every month for 12 months, putting a music video next to each one. That was just perfection. I loved that. What a beautiful way to say goodbye. Although they scuppered it at the end, but let's get on to that. The thing is that they had this range of songs that just kept on coming out, and if we have a little look here, looking at their, you just see the sort of range of songs that came out, and of course it started back with Pyo, which was just such a fun song. I loved that, and then it just kind of worked up from there. Where is Pyo? There he is, Pyo. And then we just had this range of songs that were each so utterly different, so interesting, so unique. And for me, it was one of their best runs of songs ever. You put all these songs together, and I think you might actually have the best BiSH album. I pointed out that Final Shits was the song that, to me, I felt kind of frustrated when that came out. Like, I was thinking, when it came out, it seemed to be at the end of a long line of songs that had been somewhat similar, and, you know, sort of Going to Destruction as a general, you know, you had stacking. In Case was very different, but you had stacking, and then Final Shits is like, just cutting these songs from the same cloth. So, when suddenly we started with Pyo, I was like, yes, Pyo is a step in the right direction. And then just every song afterwards was interesting and different. What a great run of songs we got. And it was just, you know, such a joy because it exemplified everything that made BiSH so wonderful. They say if you're going to leave people wanting more, and boy was that the route they were going on. And they rounded it up with Zuto, which was just such a beautiful goodbye. Now, I've reviewed each of these songs individually. You can find them on the channel. However, you know, I love them, and Zuto was just a fantastic goodbye. It was perfect in my opinion, the way that the video sort of called back to their previous things. It was a song that wasn't quite their best song. It was just a good way around it out and saying, there you go, we'll leave you on that, we'll leave you wanting more. And I was so happy Then they kept going. Now, Bye Bye Show. Okay, so when we had Bye Bye Show, and okay, that's nice. Okay, maybe it's a bit of a bonus. However, I just felt that as a final song, it wasn't quite as satisfying as Zuto. It was a better single. We heard that a lot on the radio here in Japan. It was a better single. However, I just felt like it didn't quite feel as satisfying as a goodbye. It felt like we'd had this sort of big teary goodbye of Zuto, and it was replaced with a sort of a bittersweet goodbye of Bye Bye Show. And that felt like a very whack move to me. And that, yes, it's kind of like a bit of subversive thing to tag on the end there, both a bonus and also a little bit of a bittersweet ending. I don't know. I just felt like, Zuto was such a perfect ending that I wasn't sure about that. And then they kept going. Then we had Innocent Arrogance. Why? Now, I'm not going to complain about extra BiSH songs. I'm really not. But if you were going to do this, why not just keep Bye Bye Show? Why not just keep it? Don't release it. Just leave it until you know it's over. It was messy that came out. Then we had this whole thing of BiSH performing the BiSH The Next songs, and this brings us on to the whole other problem, that the whole BiSH The Next thing, I'm not a fan of it. I don't think it's a good idea. I get that it's a good idea from a business side, from WAC's side, in that they're trying to make sure the brand stays alive. I mean, we said that BiSH itself was formed in the original disbandment of the first lineup of BiSH, and they are big on keeping brands alive. I said from the minute the announcement of BiSH's disbandment was first made, sort of way over a year ago, I said at the time, or nearly 2 years ago, I said at the time, there's no way that WAC are going to let the BiSH brand die. They're going to keep it alive somehow. I didn't expect them to start this whole thing before BiSH had disbanded, of finding a new BiSH. And they went down that whole road. I was not a big fan of the fact that it seems to have taken a lot of the media attention. It's been focused on BiSH The Next. I know that they've got the BiSH members involved in it, but to me, then it goes into that whole reality TV show. This is not the area that I'm interested in. You could say, well, Howard, just don't pay attention. But as I say, it's been there. Like the last couple of songs we had from BiSH are them doing versions of songs that I'm assuming are BiSH The Next songs. It just it all muddies what should have been just a nice, clean goodbye, which is what I wanted. I also must say that whether they're picked, whether BiSH are involved in picking the next BiSH, I don't think you can tell your audience who the next BiSH are. No, we as an audience will vote for that. We have a personal connection with what we love about BiSH. And for a start, I mean, I follow the media around the whole BiSH The Next project. I've seen apart from that, it all just looks like sort of Simon Cowell style reality TV. I've seen who they're picking, and it doesn't, to me, feel like BiSH. It doesn't at all carry any of those sort of honest, earnest feelings that I get from BiSH. It just feels like such a mass-produced talent TV show thing, and it feels soulless, and it doesn't capture that sort of earnest kind of girl power thing. I know it's kind of a weird choice to sort of talk about the girl power thing, but that's one of the things that made BiSH so fun, is the fact that it was that kind of, it's that female thing, and you're looking at the next group and it's kind of a mixed group. I just don't feel it will have the same energy. For me, this whole thing's a mess. And then putting if those are the last two releases we get from BiSH of original songs, then yeah, I will feel sad about that. If I'm honest with you, I will feel sad about that. And we have BiSH The Next coming out. Now, this is another positive. I love the way that they did a video about the release, which was this huge collection thing, which is it's like a pizza box. You can buy the BiSH The Next thing, comes in like a huge pizza box. And they were showing that, and it's got all of the previous music in there. It's got everything, so you got everything in one place. It's got photo albums. That's great. So they've done a nice thing around there. They've done that. I also really liked how they did this thing where they had people do cards. They opened this up to fans, but they also opened this up to celebrities, as you see here, Japanese celebrities, where people could say BiSH is and then give their opinion. Some of these are fantastic. Some of these not so much. I'll leave it up to you to decide which ones you like. So there was at least 2 or 3 people who said BiSH is BiSH, which I was like, yeah, okay, edgy. My least favourite one, Taka from 1OK Rock. Such a Taka from 1OK Rock thing to say BiSH is emo. Don't. But some of these were really creative. You got to see like some celebrities. I don't know this person, but this one was really beautiful. There goes one of the BiSH's BiSH ones. There was some funny. There's another BiSH's BiSH one. There were some really funny ones here. We had BiSH is Not Dead. I really like the ones from Yabai T-shirts Yasan. They had a couple in here as well, which were quite funny. But yeah, I mean, yeah, Bish's tank top, which if you know Yabai T-shirts Yasan, that's quite an honour that they would put that in there. Bish's good end. That's kind of nice. Oh, so actually, I didn't realise how many. So a lot of these are in English. I guess it says Bish is, but a lot of these are in English, which is interesting because it means you get some rather funny, odd English lines there. But and this one's really beautiful as well. So there were just some really great goodbyes on this. And then we look at the actual Bish is over process. They sort of labelled it on their site with 4 things. They had the release of the 12 songs, which was great. We had Zuto. You can't make it sound like Zuto is the last song because you didn't leave it last. Then we had the tour, and you can see it's all complete. Bish Festival complete. And then the last live show is complete. It's all complete. And you know what? I think that these pictures have always made me laugh. I'm going to leave these on screen for a while. I love the fact that Bish were allowed to leave with this build-up. We had everything built up to the end. It was not just a sudden, oh, we have creative differences, we're going different ways. It was something where it was planned, they thought about it, and I have to give Wack credit for that. As much as I've been sort of dishing into Wack a little bit in this video, I have to give him credit for that. We got to see these faces. I'm trying to be sincere, and these faces are making it very hard to do so. But it was nice to see Bish leaving on the sort of terms that most bands couldn't dream of. And that is something that for me will always be just really lovely about this, is that at least we got a proper goodbye. Yes, I think they fluffed the ending by having this fucking slew of songs come out in a really awkward way. I think if tonight, you know, we had Bish is over and then suddenly Bye Bye Show came out now, that would in a way be a really sort of beautiful, tearful goodbye, but that's not how it was dealt with. So yeah, Bish is over. There were ups and downs to the way it was dealt with. Considering that Wack was involved, there was always going to be a degree of fumbling things and, you know, sort of trying to make it too much of a corporate mess. But, you know, in the end, we as fans got what we want. We got a lot of songs. We got a lot of really good, interesting songs in the final run. We got some great stuff in that. You got that beautiful best of. We got a beautiful final album. We got, you know, there was brilliant concerts. Everyone knew when they were ending. I mean, I haven't seen the final show yet, but I bet it was a tearful goodbye tonight. I can't wait to see it. And yeah, so well, that's what it was. That's what we got. So I guess it's time to conclude it. So yeah, we're kind of at a funny place here in that there's so many bands who I've got to really enjoy through this channel. And obviously you'll all have your own stories about how you got to know Bish as well, which I'd love to put them in the comments. It'd be great to hear, and, you know, sort of what got you into them and such like. But I had such an interesting experience getting into them. And like I said, I got into them very early at the beginning of the channel, and I already knew a lot about Japanese music, but I think my taste in Japanese music was maybe not in the area that a lot of international fans have been looking. And so for me, Bish were right at that period where I was being opened up to a type of Japanese music that I maybe hadn't paid attention to. And so it was a group that meant a lot to me. Obviously, I had that fun experience of being on television talking about Bish, even if they only used a terrible tiny clip where most of it I'm going, which, you know, I do that a lot. I go, it's a group who I've had an interesting history with. I've always been a big fan of them, and yet at the same time, I feel like I've been able to be honest about the things I've liked and disliked, which again, I think is a core thing of being a fan of any group. And so here we are with a conclusion. And I've seen other groups who we really enjoyed who went away. I mean, we had Silent Siren, big fan of them, and I had a really interesting story following them. The way that their story ended was just, you know, this sudden one member leaves and then it just kind of all peters out, and then now it's very weird how that went. And Bish feels like a weird one because it feels like a story that's had a conclusive ending, and we're going to get some nice spin-offs and sequels in what the members do next. And I just feel like this is a rather poignant moment. Yes, I am sad that I didn't get to go to the show today, and yet I feel like for everyone we got a very interesting conclusion to this story. And I cannot wait. I'm genuinely excited to see what happens next for each of the members. I mean, Chicchi's solo career, I mean, I'm hopeful that she gets the most out of that. I've said about all the groups, you know, Aina, so much potential, Ayuni, so much potential, and Momoko seems to be going in a great direction. What's happening with Atsuko and Lin Lin? They got really interesting opportunities coming up where we're going to get to see sides of their personality really expanded upon. I'm just so excited for what we get next. But I feel like the BiSH story has now been told, and I really enjoyed it. I think this is a piece of music history that we got to enjoy, a piece of music history that will be very hard to replicate. Yes, there are going to be other groups, and there are other groups around right now who do these sort of slightly edgy thing, who mix different styles. I think that BiSH were such a unique thing that even Whack can't seem to replicate it. And Whack, believe me, are trying. They were catching lightning in a bowl. They were personalities who were perfectly matched with each other. Yes, the group went through a couple of changes. Hug Me, obviously, has been gone for a while. However, I think that the iteration we have for most of the time that BiSH has been with us was just such a beautiful balance of character, talent, different voices, personalities. For all the things I've said negatively about Whack, there also the fact that they gave them a good line of songs. Yeah, there were times where the singles just seemed to be a line of very generic Kentacore songs, but it didn't mean that you couldn't pick up an album and hear a good range of songs in there. They were a group who gave us different styles, who gave us a high level of quality throughout, who gave us interesting personalities, fun videos. I mean, the video for More Than Like in the very first year of this channel, where we did our very first ever end of year backer awards, that was the one that I gave video of the year to, because I was just like, More Than Like, brilliant. And what was it? What was it beyond a demonstration of their ability to do fantastic professional choreography, sing a brilliant song, and also have a video which highlights just what wonderfully interesting and fun people they are? This is a group who, yeah, it's going to be very hard for us to get another one. We probably never will. But I'm glad that we got a proper ending. I'm glad that they're off to do their own things. And I think I'm kind of repeating myself now. So I'm going to leave it at that. As I said, get in the comments. Tell me your BiSH stories. Tell me what you liked about this group. Just tell me what you think about this. It's a big moment, I think, for Japanese music as a general. It's a big moment for us. And I suspect our next video, we might do one about maybe their final performance, if I feel there's enough for me to actually have worth saying. Probably won't be as long as this one. But yeah, hopefully the next time I'm talking about BiSH, we'll be talking about the wonderful things that the individual members are doing moving forwards. But until then, and until I see you in the comments, for now, I must say a big, heartfelt, well, to BiSH, ciao, ciao.